Let's go to the drawer second, because you already saw some of the remains of that. So drawer is specified for the material interface specification. You see these in the Android operating system quite a lot, and they are implemented into Material UI. So they are these things that open from left or right or top or bottom of the screen on some input. In this case, I have a button which opens the drawer. I have text field here again, and then I just have done button. But the drawer can contain anything, so this could be much more complex thing to input stuff. And then when I click that button, it updates the user interface, main interface, and the drawer disappears. And you can also close the drawer just by clicking outside of it. And that's under your control, as we will see in the example. So I have a Boolean value telling whether the drawer is open or not. It's false by default. I have name and set name for editing the name. And I have another variable, name edited and set name edited. So this is the name that appears in the main user interface, and this is the name that is being edited in the text field. And I have update name, which sets the edited name to the event target value. So this is registered to the text field every time the user types in a character or removes a character. This is called, so we update this variable. Then I have two methods for the drawer. One is close drawer, which just sets the drawer open to false, and switch drawer, which, well, actually switches whether the drawer is open or not, but in practice this turns the drawer, opens the drawer, so it could be just renamed open drawer and call here the open drawer. And then I have use name, and this is called when the drawer is closed with the done button. So I set the actual name to the name edited, and then I set the name edited to empty one, and then I call the close drawer. So basically just sets the drawer open to false. And the application itself in the render is very simple. So we have this drawer component, and it has attribute open, where the Boolean value of whether it's open or not should be given. And then it has on close, which I call the close drawer too. So this on close occurs when the drawer is open and the user, for example, clicks outside here in the main interface, so that in this case the drawer should close. If you don't do that, then the drawer doesn't disappear, so you are actually in control what happens on that situation. And you can do additional things than just hiding the drawer in this case, if your application calls for that. Again, I have form group, and well, it contains just one text field. In this case, takes the name edited as the value for the text field, and on change to this update name, just same kind of text field operation we have seen many times. And I have this button with the done text, and it calls that use name, which we just saw. And then in the main interface, I have this typography, and you may have noticed this variant things. You can give different attributes, like different heading levels, for example. So with H1 variable, we get big font, And from the material UI specification, you can see what sort of values you can give to this variant. Just saying hello name, so taking the JavaScript variable value here. And the button here just calls that switch drawer. So very simple example, and the key thing is to remember that the drawer can contain any components inside it, so you can build drawers of any complexity you want. Then finally I have one more slightly more complex example called date and time, which shows some elements of managing time information and collecting time information from the user. So I have this date input text field, which allows me to adjust any of the values, day, month, year. And if you click this down arrow, you get this dialog where the user can find the date they want. And well, then there is also this clearing button, which just clears the value. And then I have a slider which allows, again, layout. I haven't done anything for that, so definitely need some space around elements and so on. This allows me to give the number of days this event continues up to 100 days, and you can see that the date here is correctly calculating things, and I'm using the date class behind the scenes, as you will see in a moment, so that I don't need to do any of those nasty calculations of what date it actually is when we go 48 days from the 1st of January this year. And what day it would be if we went to the first 20 days or 48 days from the 1st of January last year. Yeah. So going to the code. I have two variables here. The start time, which is a date. I just create a new date, and when you create a new date, it's this very moment when you create it. And then I have end time, which is another date. So by default, when this application starts, the two dates are the moment when it started. I'm using the use styles here to put some margin around the text fields and setting their width. And I created an instance of this date-time format, and we will go more deeply into this date-time format when we talk about internationalization. At this moment, just briefly mention, okay, I'm using the UK English for the formatting and telling that year, month, and day should be presented with numbers. And yeah, create the classes for the use styles. Then I have handle data change, which is put into the text field. So whenever the date is changed in that particular text field, which is this one. So this is actually a text field, but a specific type of text field. And what I get here is the, like usual, the event target value. And here I'm checking if that event target value has length, if it has any text in it, because if the user does this, then it's an empty string. And only then I start doing things. So I can actually create a new date out of this event target value. So it returns a string, but it's type of string which this date class, which is a JavaScript date class. This is a JavaScript level class. It can pass that when you create a new one. So I set the start time into this new date based on that string. And then I set the end time to be a new date where I get the get time is the milliseconds since the epoch being the computer world, the 1st of January in 1970, the very first second. And I take the timestamp of that date and I add the duration to that, so I get the new end time. So whenever the start time changes in this application, when this one changes, this one changes as well, so that the duration between these two moments in time stays the same. And I'm calculating the duration here, just getting the timestamp from both of them and subtracting the start time from the end time. And now I have updated both the start time and end time with new date objects. Then we have duration update, which is actually called from the slider on the bottom. This one, of course, that needs to operate only the end time. And what I'm doing here, I get the slider value here. So this is number of dates. It's a number. And I get the start time, the timestamp. I get the duration, and the timestamp is in milliseconds. So to go from days, I need to multiply it by 24 hours per day, by 60, 60 minutes per hour, by 60 seconds per minute, and 1000 for 1000 milliseconds per second. And I create a new date, so creating a new date with the timestamp value, and then just that end time with that. So this date object can be created with a couple of different things. Here I'm creating it with the string presentation. You can modify this and console log to see actually what format it is that comes out of this date selection text field and what this one accepts. And here I'm creating a new date with the timestamp value, the milliseconds since the epoch. And here I'm calculating the duration into a variable. So getting the end time and start time timestamps and dividing by the 1000 and 60 and 60 and 24. So now I get the information how many days there are between the start time and end time. So just like I explained in the beginning of the lecture, try to keep the amount of the state variables minimal. So I could have maybe the start time and the duration as days, or I could have the start time and end time, but it's not recommended to have all those three variables because the third one can always be calculated based on the two others. So I decided to have just the start time and end time, and then I calculated the duration into this variable before the return statement. And now we can look at the return statement, what is in the interface. First, I have a typography, the big heading type, text event typing, so this one, and have other typography heading level 2 type, so it's a little bit smaller font here on the second line. And inside this, I write text from and to, and then I'm using this datetime format and calling this format method to format the start time and similarly formatting the end time. So this datetime format gives me this date presentation, which is familiar to us. UK uses similar formatting, but for example, US uses different one, and there are lots of different date formats actually around the world. But we will go into those details in the internationalization part of this course. So the key thing is that the datetime format formats my date objects into something I can show to the user. Then there is the text field for editing the start time. Give it the label, and this is the critical part here. The type is date. And what this does is that it creates or specifies the text field to be the date type text field, and where this is specified is actually the browser. So each browser can have its own implementation of text field for typing in dates or inputting dates. So what you saw is how Chrome has implemented this date type field. So this is not something that's specified in the material UI in any way. The material UI used to have and well, has its own date picker and time picker, but it seems to be that it's still kind of ongoing work, at least ongoing work, so that maybe one day we will have in the previous version of material UI there were these nice date and time pickers available. On chains, similar to the, well, I'm using unnecessarily actually the arrow notation here, regular text field on chains, and default value and well, the class name from the styles and the props. So this default value takes the same format string as it outputs, so this needs to be the very specific format, and the efficient way to get that from date object is to call this to ISO string. So this standardization organization has specified a standard how to present dates or date and time, and this string contains the date and time starting with the date and then time in the end. So I just take substring of that first 10 characters. String gives me only the date part, and this is what the text field accepts. Then I will put this duration and days text here, and then underneath that I have inside a box a slider. I'm setting the width to be about 50% so that the slider doesn't go all the way to the right edge. As said, I definitely should put some space on the left at least. So slider is, I think, something we haven't seen yet. Quite simple component use. Single text slider. You give the value. This is a number, the duration, number of days I have. There are lots of different parameters. You have the value label display auto, automatically deciding the value label is displayed and when. Minimum and maximum value, and what is the step. So now it's 1, so any number of days between 1 and 100 can be selected. And yeah, you can put different values here to make it jump in steps. And on chains, here's the receives the events when the slider is moved. So it receives the event and as a second parameter the new value, so you don't need to dig it up from anywhere. And that's it for this particular implementation.